Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Canyon. Welcome back to another installment of the, I guess this is part of the tech series, where we're going to try to show you, if not how to do it, then at least how I do it. I've gotten more than one request about how do I make links, and I feel like somewhere in a video before I've done this, but we're going to put it all at once. How to make links. This is how I make links. Now, I do have access to equipment that a lot of people don't. Having a lathe will make things a lot easier. But to make 3 of the 4 link variants that we will kind of go over today, you don't need a lathe. It helps if you have one, but you don't need one. You will need something that will allow you to sand, some sort of fixed sander. I use a 9-inch disc sander, combination belt disc sander. You will more than likely need a drill press. A drill press will help a great deal. And you are going to need both a tap and a die. Well, depending on which, just buy both. I just use regular, what are they? They come on a yellow card. The name will come to my head. It's not Wilson. It's not Dalton. It's something relative. It's something like, anyway. You will need an M4 by 0.7 millimeter pitch tap and die if you want to make your own links. You will need the tap for one type of link, the what I call hollow links, and you will need the die for just solid links. We will start. So there are basic materials that we use. This is how you will construct the simplest link. You generally need the least amount of equipment to do this. You need a sander and a die, and a ruler, and you can make these. This is 4 millimeter stainless. You can get bags of these on Amazon. They come in 5 packs, 10 packs, fairly inexpensively. I believe these are 300 millimeter. Yeah, a 300 millimeter rod of 4 millimeter stainless. You'll get a whole box of them, enough to make a whole vehicle's worth of links. I do not prefer these for lower links. What you'll see coming on like the later Vanquish kits, they'll use 4 millimeter lowers. 4 millimeter lowers, the rod end, let's just grab a rod end. The rod end is much bigger than the rod material itself, so that can get stuck. So it's not optimal. For upper links, this is kind of my go-to. Particularly if you want to make a link that is in a length that you don't have. That's how we ended up here today. I have 2 links that need to be made for the gentleman just out of frame here that I don't have. I need 80, what I call, you'll hear a lot of measurements that I don't know if they're industry standard, they're just what I use here. So we need to make these 2 links, because see the amount of thread showing? I need links that are 85 millimeters shoulder to shoulder, and I don't have that. These are 80s, so we have about 2.5 millimeters on either side. So I need to make those links, and I'm also considering making high clearance links for the back because his pinion is way up high. We can get away with a high clearance. We can actually put dial more angle into this, so we might have to make uppers as well. We'll see what we end up with. Uppers would more than likely be these. Then our second type of link that we make is, this is 6 millimeter stainless rod. These you can get away, I'll show you both ways. I will put one end on one of these. A lathe makes it very easy to do. You can also do it on a drill press with a file. Having a drill press is going to help, particularly in the final 2 types of links, which are basically the same type of link. This is brass. I want to say it's 5/16 brass, which would put it somewhere in the ballpark of 7 millimeter, I want to say. 8 millimeter. This is 8 millimeter brass, which is, yeah. You want to talk about dead. 5/16 brass, which 5/16 brass has the opposite effect of the 4 millimeter. You see we're actually slightly larger. Well, the beauty of these brass rods, which again are obtainable on Amazon, is they take to a file real nice. So what I will do, and we will show it later, is I have a sacrificial end. Everybody's got extra rod ends. Everybody's got cheap rod ends. We put a rod end on there and we just hit it with a file until they're the same size. Then you can get this real perfect match there. Running along with the brass is also in the 5/16. Let's see if it's exactly 5/16. Yes, it is. Exactly 5/16. This is Delrin rod. Now, this can be used for uppers. I know that there are a lot of Delrin link kits around there. I don't like to use Delrin beyond a certain length because we can get a little bit of deflection over a foot of stainless. These are 8-inch. We're not going to get any bend out of that. We're certainly not going to get any bend out of 8mm brass. That's not bending. That's also very heavy, which is why we use it. This is what I'm going to be using for the front lowers on the gentleman you just saw. Delrin, on the other hand, is fairly flexy. Now, this is solid rod, so when I make these, I prefer to drill them all the way through. That way it turns it into a tube, because the tube is stronger. It now has more surface area, so it's less likely to bend. The manufacturing procedure for both of these is identical. The manufacturing process for these is very similar, but not identical, because this is 6mm and we need to be able to run a 4mm die down it. So it's a little bit of lathe required for that one. So we're gonna go from easiest to, and then also, like, if you wanted to do a high clearance upper, the method for bending these is you make the link to the length you need it. You make a mark where you think you want the bend to be. You stick it in a vise and you go, and you just cold bend it. It's 4mm stainless. It's going to cold bend just fine. If you want to bend these, you're going to have to put heat on it. You're going to have to put a blowtorch on it, and then you're going to. Generally, what I recommend is, if you don't have one, you're going to want to make a tool that will be basically a handle that has a hole in it that's about 6mm, so that you can insert that handle down over and bend it so that it will bend it uniformly. I don't use tubing benders or anything like that, because this is indeed solid rod. They are very strong. I don't recommend cold bending the 6mm. And when it comes to bending the brass and the Delrin, I just don't. You can heat bend the Delrin, but I don't like the inconsistency of it. And when you heat the brass up, it can lose the temper. So if I'm gonna make a brass lower, I just leave it straight. If I'm gonna do a high clearance link, I will do it out of this. Or, I mean, the first step is you follow the unofficial woodworker's credo, which is, I'm only gonna make it if I can't buy it, right? I need an 85mm front lower for that. I don't have any. I dig through this. There are no 85mm shoulder-to-shoulder links in there. I go through the high clearance links. There's nobody 85 shoulder-to-shoulder. There's a lot of 90s. There's a lot of 80s. They don't have the length I want, so I'm going to have to make my own. So we will start with the simplest. That is this length. And what you're going to do is, first thing, belt sander is the way. You're going to take it over to the belt sander and you're going to clean the end up. You're going to clean the end up, belt or disc, just by exactly how you would think you clean up the end of it, because these are definitely stamped off when they're cut off of the big rods in whatever nameless factory they come out of. They're just whoop, a shear just cuts these to length. So the end is messed up. So you're going to want to clean that end up. And once the end is cleaned up, you're going to clamp that thing into a vise. Did I mention you'll need a vise? If you don't have a vise, you should. Go buy a vise. Pause the video, go buy a vise, come back. If you already have one, good, continue. You're just going to use a die, and you're going to cut a 4mm thread straight down the thing. And what you're going to do is you're going to cut it to where the die bottoms out. Because if you're using a standard hex die, and the name of who makes the dies still hasn't popped into my head, the depth of the die will give you roughly 10mm of thread cut onto the rod, because 10mm is about where you want to be. Then it will leave you with about 10mm on the end of it, on a full rod, right? We don't have to worry about the length of it. And then, because we know we're going to have about 10 millimeters of insertion, you're going to go to the vehicle in question, whatever you might be working on. So let's say we were remanufacturing this upper. I want to measure shoulder to shoulder, and this shoulder to shoulder is an 80. It's exactly 80. So we know we have 10 millimeters on this side, give or take. Yeah, it's right around 10 millimeters. And then we know we're going to need 10 millimeters on the other side. So 10 plus the 80 plus 10, last I checked, is 100. So we're going to make a mark at about, just go right in between 100 and 105. 102, 103, it doesn't really matter. Then you're going to use your thing of choice. You can use a hacksaw, you can use a Dremel cutoff wheel. You're going to cut it off right at that line. You're going to clean the end up on the sander, just like you did before, and then you're going to tap the other end, just like you did before. And then you will have this. It might be 1 millimeter longer or so, but that's fine, because with 10 millimeter, we're not quite at the limits of embedment. And the beauty of it is 10 millimeters of embedment is more than enough for any application. So if you go to thread it into the rod end and there's still a little bit of thread showing, unthread the rod end, go back over to the sander, take a thread or two off the end, put it back together. These are what I call quick and dirties. I made this one in about 5 minutes. It was the footage to exhibit. And the beauty is, if you hold it up next to some generic link, you're just making the same thing. These are 5 millimeter rods. This I use 4. Strength is going to be absolutely fine. Like, there's going to be no flex in that. This is indeed the correct length for, if I can get my hands out of the way of the camera. This is the correct length to replace that upper, should I decide to. And of course, I made that after saying, oh, maybe we'll kick the pinion angle a little more, which would mean these would need to be longer or shorter and move it to a different hole, whatever we like. But you can make these. You need a vise, a die, and a disc sander, and that's what it takes to make these. And you can make them in minutes. Oh yeah, you might have seen you might have noticed a big can get tipped upside down. That is drill and tap fluid, and you will want something to, you can get away with a lot of different stuff. You can, WD-40 will work in a pinch. As a matter of fact, if you're ever doing any cutting or machining on aluminum, WD-40 is fantastic. You can go down to the Lowe's and get yourself some Spider Mock Blue Goo, which I've been trying. It's water-based, so it's not, I've been using Relton Rapid Tap forever. I have had this can for, I don't know, a decade. I guess I don't tap as much as some other folks, but chlorinated paraffin. Yeah, you can use a candle. You can use any number of things as tap fluids. This stuff is okay. It kind of smells like, I'm trying to remember what it smells like. Suntan lotion, a little bit. It smells a little bit like sunblock. So if you're worried about any sort of caustic stuff, maybe don't make your own links, but the Mock Blue glue is not bad. I just prefer Rapid Tap. It is my absolute go-to. Making a 4 millimeter link is quick and easy and dirty, and you really only need to do it if you need a link. You're generally not going to be making a link this long, in my experience. You're going to be making a link like this long, because you can't find that crazy long link to fit your skid forward exactly the way you want. And for uppers, this is the way to go. So, now we will go through how to make 6 millimeter, which is what I would use for lowers. Am I going to bend one today? I don't know. But we'll go through the basic process of making one. So for the 6 millimeter, all we need to do is make the ends 4 millimeters so that we can cut it with a die. The camera, I don't know if I was forgetting to press the button or I was hitting the button in between, but we'll see if we can cobble enough together of pieces where I was making the links. I go for about 12 millimeters of depth, so I'm trying to turn down the end portion. I don't bother to clean the ends up. They don't touch the sander first. We just throw them in the lathe. We turn them down till we get them right around 4 millimeters. We do about 12 millimeters of depth. Same thing, put a bevel on the end of it on the sander, put it in the vise, cut the threads down. I've been messing with the spider. You know what? It's doing okay. The spider on stainless is really good. Like these went really well. I was very pleased with the operation of the spider on this. Cut the threads, then back to the sander again because you're going to have extra threads. Your threads are going to be 11, 12, 13, 14 millimeters long. Take them down to around 10. It's not critical. Then you will come back over with it with one end cut, and you will make sure that you're in range, right? You'll be like, yeah, I look like I'm pretty close. I know it's supposed to be this one, but you get what I'm talking about. We know it's 85 millimeters, so we'll make a mark at around 85 millimeters. Add about 12 millimeters. Cut it off with your choice, whether it be cut off wheel, whether it be hacksaw, what have you. Then the same thing. You just repeat what you did on this end, and then you've got a link, which looks pretty much like any other link that you would see. And I think I went about a half a millimeter over. 85.8. Just the slightest bit too long. Now, if that 0.8 of a millimeter lengths that out too much, pushes it out too much, and we get too much down angle on that, then you have two options. You can take it back to the lathe, take a little bit of the shoulder off. That's too much work. My recommendation is you take the rod end that you're using, take it over to that exact same sander and go, and take just a little bit of it off. Because the only reason we're here, the only reason that we're making these is that because we can't get them. Well, we can, but we don't have them. So was I close? Yeah. 85.67 on that one. And I got to get it grabbed just right so it'll hold. And 85.83. So what is that, 0.16 millimeters off? I think it's fine. And these are the precise length, but they're not the lengths that I intend on using. So we just throw them in the bin over there. Because for this one, I intend to do brass. Now the brass is quite a bit easier. You don't need a lathe for this. You don't need a lathe for the 4 millimeter, and you don't need a lathe for the brass or for the Delrin. You can just cut these, and the beauty of these is you can literally just cut these because brass is nice and soft. We know that we need 85 millimeters. So we'll go right to 85 millimeters, and then I will just go like this. And brass will allow us to make a nice, I don't know how well it shows up there. Let me try to get the light just right. When you're in person, there's a nice, yeah, you can see it right there. You can draw a line all the way around. And again, you can hacksaw. I generally cut brass with a hacksaw. So we will cut the brass outside of the line with a hacksaw. So I cut it outside my line. So we wanted 85 millimeters. You can't cut back on, so go over. The weight differential of this is ridiculous. Okay, so what was the length of this one? Okay, so this one's an 80. And let me grab one of those fresh ones. This is an 85. So they are fairly close in length. Oh no, we'll use the little guy. If you get into the real weeds of it, so this is overall, this is a 100 millimeter, 4 millimeter link. It weighs 9.5 grams, which is great for an upper because they can afford to be lighter. This is a 105, 6 millimeter lower. It weighs 20.4. So you can see why for uppers we opt for the cheap and easy. I mean, it's literally half the weight. And then this is as of yet unfinished. It is sitting right about 87 millimeters long. We're about 2 millimeters outside. Just that slug weighs 37 grams. So going from the 4 to the 6 doubles, going from the 6 to the brass 8 doubles again. So 4 of these will weigh less than 1 of these. Now, what I do is I don't worry about the length right now. It's 87 millimeters long and we need 85. And you know what that is? That's perfect. Because there are 2 ways of doing this. If you don't have a lathe, you can shorten it up with the sander. Lathe is obviously easier, but if you don't have access to that, we understand. We're going to drill 2 holes in this, and we're going to drill 2 holes in it in 2 different ways. Now, the easiest method for this, getting into the brass and the Delrin, the process for making both is exactly the same, is chuck it up in the lathe. I use 3.3 millimeter, shorter than jobber length. They're really short shank. They only have a drilling depth of about, it's either 12 or 14 millimeters. This will prevent the bit from trying to walk. So I drill the hole to that depth, remove that 3.3 millimeter bit, replace it with another 3.3 millimeter bit, and drill it usually to about 1 inch of depth, because I don't want the chips clogging up at the bottom of the hole, because what can happen then is you break your drill bit off in the piece that you're trying to make. Ask me how I know. The surprise of the day is I'm really coming around to the spider blue goo stuff. You can just put it on with your hands, because it really does kind of smell like sunblock. My hands smell like metal and sunblock. Once you've got the hole drilled, you run a tap through it, slather it up. Just go with the spider stuff, man. The Relton, the tap fluid, rapid tap, it will get in you. You'll smell rapid tap forever. I'm really coming around. I mean, I don't know if this is a paradigm shift, but I'm sort of coming around. The other method is, if you don't have a lathe, I actually stole this from the internet. This had never occurred to me. Someone was drilling dowels in a video on the internet. You chuck the workpiece into the chuck of your drill press, position your vise underneath it, lower the drill press, clamp the piece into the vise, and then it's centered. Put in your bit, drill the hole just like you would on a lathe. Drills it pretty much exactly the same. If you have your vise bolted down, your results will be even better. My vise is not bolted down. I really need to do that. I need to make like a little plate that goes on top of my drill press so I can bolt that to it, but I haven't done that yet. Then you will have your pieces, and obviously when you go to tap the holes, you're just going to use the drill press, because that is if you don't have a lathe. If you do have a lathe, then you can just do the whole thing in the lathe. So what we get now to is, I got to find it in the bin. We get to the finishing portion, which is I finish the ends of these off. You can do it on a disc sander, you can do it with a file, you can do it however you like. I can cheat. I do it with carbide tools on the lathe. One of these is 84.81 millimeters long, and the other one is 84.85 millimeters long. So we're 0.04 millimeters apart. And you would think we were done, but we're not. We're very close. We're very close to done, but we're not quite done. Because what we're going to need is, these are M4 by 20 set screws. You can get them in big bags. You're going to take your M4 by 20. You're going to find a rod end, preferably a rod end that looks like this. Is already a little beat up. Oh, this one should probably actually be thrown away. It's halfway cut through right there. Perfect for this job. I always set the set screw into this end. Once you get these finalized, you can thread lock them. I would kind of recommend it purple, otherwise they can get a little loose and swivelly. Brass is self-lubricating to a degree. Thread these in, and you will see we have the opposite spectrum of what we were experiencing with the M4 rod, which is, yeah, right there. What are we looking at on, and this will vary end to end, because if you're talking Traxxas ends, you've got a tiny little shoulder hanging over on it. But with these, the element are 6.63, and this rod is, of course, 8. So, we're not going to do anything high-tech. we're just going to use the lathe and a file, which you could do the same thing in the drill press. Chuck it up in the drill press, hit it with a file until they're even, or even sandpaper. But we do it on the lathe because it's fast and because we can. Chuck it up in the lathe or drill press with your sacrificial rod end. Just hit it with a file. Brass goes real easy. If you're doing Delrin, just sandpaper is fine. And the Delrin is even less necessary because I don't use Delrin lowers. If you're going for some sort of super lightweight thing, then, you know, knock yourself out. But I'm only doing brass. So you do one end, flip it around, do the other end. If you'd like to clean it up with some sandpaper, that is entirely up to your discretion. They're going to get basically murdered over time. The lower links on baseline here are brass and have been worn into a D shape because brass slides really well. It's not just about the weight low, it's about the slideability of it. You finish the first one, you take your little sacrificial end, you do the second verse exactly the same as the first. And then you will have two links, and you bring it on back, you get your big long guy, just like you put in the you can take it out of the sacrificial one. I keep it around because I make a lot of links this way. Thread this in. I like to go in, halfway is fine. We've usually tapped to about 14 millimeters of depth anyway. Now these will probably not be precisely to the shoulder because to get this down to that 6.6 millimeter, you're gonna have to really go at it. Now, these don't want to key up, right? So we don't just keep cranking down. We'll take it and we'll go. I'll come about a thread out. We'll see. It's adjustable. Get them. Yeah, that's a lot closer. And then little snug turn right there. Whoa, we're a little off. We can use one of our new links to just get that extra little bit of twist on it. There we go. We've got one. We've got two. Now the fun part will be, grab this guy. We'll do this side because there's no lock nut involved. How close did we get? How close did we get? And that's the thing. We might as well be dead on because we can replace, we can adjust, we can trim a rod end, we can do any number of things to get this precise because sometimes I am going to pop fresh ends into the new brass guy we've made so that we can use our comparator. Now, I said that they were 84.85, 84.75. So the link, which is made out of TRX 4 bits with element ends on the shock guy, is 130 exactly. 129 and a half, 130 eye to eye. And the one that we have just made is the exact same length. And tell me it doesn't look better. Like if there's a reason to get out there and make your own links. Yes. So we can bosh this guy right into place. Oh yeah. And then you will have the joy, the feeling of the thing that you did. I have made a thing. This is why these are my preferred unbent brass lowers. They're easy to make. They're easy to adjust. They slide the best. They look, I mean, what are we talking about here? They look real nice. I do think we're going to have to do high clearance rears. And as I said, if you want a high clearance, a regular 4 millimeter, I'm looking for the material. If you want a high clearance this, it's very high tech. You put it in a vise and either hit it with a hammer to bend it or slide something over it and bend it down. To bend the thicky boys like this, you're going to need to put it in a vise, with where you want the bend. See how there's that scratch nick right there? Like say we lined that up in the vise, hit it with the torch, starts to get to a reddish color, give it a little angle and put a bend. My recommendation when bending links like this, we can throw in this little tidbit. I'm not going to bend a link right now because I've made these two, and I think we're good. While I'm talking, we'll swap out the other one. My recommendation is if you're going to bend links, if you're going to do high clearance, particularly for lowers, do the 6mm if you have the ability. You can also bend pre-existing links, pre-existing steel links. If you have a steel link, now mind you, it will get a little shorter. So if you're running a rod end like this and you bend it, you might have to switch to a link like this, you know, to help make up some of the length that you lost when you bent it, because the bent link got shorter. Eye to eye, the length didn't change, but physically on the vehicle, it got shorter. So take that into account. So, high clearance, I still, except in, I mean, certainly there are instances where it is more helpful than in others, but I definitely have more straight links in fleet service than I do high clearance. Many of the high clearance, you know, I tell people, I'll tell you right now, if you can't live by how the woodworker lives, if you can't buy it, I couldn't get this exact length. I mean, I probably could. They're out there somewhere, I have to assume. But in short order, I couldn't get the link length that I needed / wanted. I could have spaced the front end out differently. I did not want to make it shorter. I wanted to run an 85mm lower with these rod ends, so I found myself in the position of making links. I would advise, if you can buy the link, buy the link. If you need to make the link, make the link. There is, no matter how many of them you've made, how many times you do it, if it's your first set or your 20th set, there is this little, there's a feeling of accomplishment that I made this. This is concerning, right? Okay, only at the fullest of droop, right there we're clear. So that's why I'm not, oh, and clear again. I'm not too worried about it. Do I wish that the bottom of this servo, do people make brass servo butts? Can you get a brass servo butt? I might just actually put some slidey material on there, but you know, he already matches in. So, make your own links if you wanna, make your own links if you gotta. Otherwise, you know, there's that ROI, there's that return on investment. You're going to be putting in some time and some materials. The material cost is very cheap. I will have the links to all of the Amazon metals, the 6mm, the 4mm, the brass. I get my Delrin from McMaster. I have not looked to see if Delrin is available on Amazon in small sizes, but I have to assume that it is. So another crawler link in the bin. All of the other ones I just made in the bin. Yeah, I could go finish the other 4mm and put it up here on the top and replace those, but we replace them as needed. And I think if any link was going to go on here, it would be a high clearance link, probably made to almost the same spec as this, so that the bend would pull the pumpkin angle under a little bit. It's all custom stuff. It's all bespoke. You're basically just trying to get it to fit what you want to have, and be as nearly, that's what I was looking for. I couldn't find the other one. You want them to be as nearly as close to the same as possible. If they're not exactly the same, you say, well, coach, we'll get them next time. And you dial one of the rod ends out half a turn. I did this in a more difficult way. When you're dealing with angled rod ends, your fitment has to be a lot closer you can't fudge as much because you're dealing in at least a full turn. If I have this, and this rod end is high clearance that way, it's angled that way, and this one is high clearance the other way. If we're half a turn, so if we're that point between 0.5 and 0.7 millimeters off, we can't make that up because this isn't a turnbuckle. So we've got to be like, oh no, like if this needs to be here and this needs to be here. 0.7 can bite you a little. So if you're making your links and you find that you're coming out like one link is 0.3 millimeters longer, 0.4 millimeters longer than the other, that's why. 0.7 is what's getting us. If they had just stuck with 0.5 for everything, if we were making 3 millimeter links, it would be a lot easier because the pitch on 3 millimeter is 0.5. It's half a millimeter. So half a turn is half a turn is a quarter. A full turn is a half. It's nice, easier numbers to work with. Don't be discouraged. The material is cheap. If you're like me and you don't value your time very much, you could spend an afternoon just tinkering away, making links. And once you start making links, you're going to be like, what can I make next? Or at least that's how it was with me. I don't know how it is with you. I don't want to put deeds in your mind. So there you go. Is that the right way to do it? Don't know. Is that how we do it here? Yeah. Lathe it if you can. If you don't own one, and I would understand 100% if you don't own one. I don't know how many people I know that don't own a shop vac. And I'm like, how do you not own a shop vac? I own like 6. Like, how do you vacuum up things? And how do people not own a compressor? So if making a set of brass links is an excuse for you to go out and buy tools if you don't own the tools, then great. Everybody should have tools, buy tools, learn to use those tools, because, the industry won't even allow us to build kits anymore. Making your own links is thumbing your nose at the manufacturers because they won't give you the thing that you want. And if they won't give you the thing that you want, you can make it yourself. So is this the best way, the fastest way, the easiest way? I don't know. I think they look pretty good. I think, little small camera issues aside, I think they came out just fine. I will work on other links later in a moment when I feel like working on links. Live by, as Jimmy DiResta, the woodworker, said in a video, if you don't feel comfortable doing it, don't do it. If you think, oh, I'm going to lose a finger trying to make this, then don't make them. But I do think that it's a good place to start on fabricating your own stuff. Because it's not that hard. Drill press and a sander is about the minimum. 4 millimeters, all you need is a vise and a die. Well, the sander will really help. The more tools you have, the easier it gets. Why do I make the brass ones all the time? Because I have the tools for it. And I made those 2 brass ones in less time than it took me to make certainly the 1/6 millimeter, the reduced down guy. That's the guy that takes the most amount of time, and that's why I would rather just make these. I would only make the 6 millimeter kind if I'm going to bend them. And I would rather go sit down and eat some chicken nuggets right now. I don't feel like doing it right now. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to set you free, loose on the rest of your day, evening, morning, what have you. I'm going to clean up the rest of the materials. I've been Midwest goodbying you this whole time while I cleaned up. The bench is basically cleaned off. Joke's on you. I will see you in the next one. Keep your comments and questions and requests coming in the comments below, or on the Discord, which is linked in the channel information page, or hit me up in a live stream if you want to ask something and get it right from the goat's mouth. Come on, hit me up. As always, in between now and when we meet again, please one and all do your very best to have a good one, everybody. And I can point this out right now. We can bring it back. We can bring it closer to the camera so it's easier to see. You can take this with as many grains of salt as you'd like, but stand back. I'm an expert.